I always believed that love was the foundation of everything, but one day life forced me to rethink that naive notion. 3 betrayals. 3 knives in the back, from the person I thought was my destiny. I endured, forgave, and tried to save something that seemed irreparable. But the final straw pushed me to do something I could never have imagined. I decided to take revenge. It wasn't cruel revenge, but it made her see herself in the mirror of truth, from which there was no escape. Do you want to know what I did? Wait, this story will definitely captivate you. I met Amelia when I was 27 years old and had just moved to Seattle for a new job. She worked in the same office, 3 years younger than me, and her laughter seemed to echo even through the concrete walls of our workplace. Amelia had incredible charm. Her blonde hair fell in waves over her shoulders, and her bright blue eyes always seemed ready for an adventure. One day, while I was waiting in line for coffee, she turned and asked, "Do you also have no idea how this coffee machine works? Or are you just pretending?" That was her way of starting a conversation, and from that day on, we became almost inseparable. Our first dates were perfect. We walked along the Seattle waterfront, ate sushi in cozy little restaurants, and talked about our dreams. I learned that Amelia dreamed of owning her own art gallery because she had been passionate about painting since childhood. She seemed perfect to me. Beautiful, intelligent, and always optimistic. After 6 months of dating, I realized I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. When I proposed to her at the top of the Ferris wheel in the city center, she cried and said, yes. Our wedding was small but magical. We rented a little garden by the lake where our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate us. Those were the happiest days of my life. We rented an apartment in a cozy neighborhood and started our life together. I loved our evenings. Watching movies, playing board games, or just talking late into the night. However, there were early signs I ignored at the time. Sometimes Amelia would disappear into another room with her phone, explaining it as work calls. Other times, she came home late, saying she had been out with friends. But I trusted her. Love had blinded me, and I was convinced she wasn't capable of betrayal. One day, we decided to get a dog, and Amelia chose a little golden retriever we named Charlie. She loved Charlie like a child, and he became another thread that tied us together. I even started thinking we were ready for a real family. We were married for 2 years, and though we had occasional arguments, I thought it was normal. Amelia often reminded me that she loved me, and I felt she was sincere. But after the 3rd year of our marriage, something changed. Her work suddenly required frequent business trips. She spent more time away from home, and I began to notice that she was becoming increasingly distant. One moment I'll never forget was finding a dress in the closet that she had never worn with me. It was an elegant black dress that looked like it had been bought for a special occasion. When I asked about it, she just waved it off, saying, "Oh, it's for work. We had a corporate event." I didn't think much of it at the time, but the feeling of unease began to grow. I was convinced we could overcome any difficulties, but I didn't yet know what lay ahead. Amelia had secrets, and they would soon start to surface. I'll never forget the day it all began. It was an ordinary Wednesday, and I came home from work early. The office air conditioning had broken, and everyone was sent home. I thought I'd surprise Amelia by getting her favorite apple and caramel pie from the little bakery around the corner that she adored. We hadn't spent much time together recently, and I wanted to do something special to bring back some of the warmth we once had. When I opened the door to our apartment, I was met with an unusual silence. Normally, Charlie would rush to greet me, wagging his tail joyfully, but this time, all I heard was a faint creaking sound. I thought Amelia might be napping and quietly made my way to the living room. But as I passed the bedroom, I heard laughter. A man's laughter. My heart sank. I stood in front of the closed door, trying to convince myself that my mind was playing tricks on me. But when I heard whispering and more laughter, I couldn't take it any longer and opened the door. On our bed, the one I had personally picked out and brought into the apartment, sat Amelia in a short robe, and next to her was a man I had never seen before. Their faces turned pale when they saw me. "Jake," "It's not what you think?" Amelia blurted out, standing up from the bed. But her voice was shaky, and even she knew how ridiculous it sounded. The man, without saying a word, quickly grabbed his belongings and slipped past me without meeting my eyes. I didn't know what to say. I stood there holding a box of pie in my hands, staring at Amelia, who was now in tears. She came up to me and touched my arm, but I pulled away. "Jake, please listen to me. It was a mistake. It will never happen again," she said, her voice full of desperation. I sat down on the couch, looking out the window. "Who was he?" I asked. She didn't respond. Her silence told me more than words ever could. "How long has this been going on?" I continued. Amelia lowered her head and barely whispered, "A month." I felt betrayed in the worst possible way. All our years together, all the promises we had made to each other, vanished in an instant. But I wasn't someone who made rash decisions. That evening, I went for a walk, leaving her alone in the apartment. I needed time to think. The next day, we sat down to talk. Amelia begged for forgiveness. She insisted it was just a mistake, that she had felt lonely because I was always busy with work. She said she loved me, that the man meant nothing to her. My mind was in turmoil. On one hand, I loved her. Seeing her tears, I wanted to believe it was true, that it was really just a mistake. On the other hand, I could no longer look at her the same way. Every moment we had shared now felt tainted by her betrayal. I decided to give her a second chance. I wanted to believe that people could change, but I set a condition. If anything like this ever happened again, it would be the end. She agreed, assuring me she would never do anything like it again. The months after the betrayal were difficult. I often woke up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that man, what he looked like, how they had met, and why I hadn't seen it coming. But Amelia made an effort to repair our relationship. She became more attentive, cooked dinner more often, and even suggested we attend couples therapy. I wanted to believe we could fix things, that this was just a rough patch we could overcome together. But deep down, I knew the trust was gone. Nearly a year passed since Amelia first betrayed me. We worked hard to rebuild our relationship. She assured me she loved and valued our marriage and had learned from her mistakes. I truly wanted to believe her. We attended couples therapy, and the therapist said that healing was a long process but possible. However, a shadow of doubt lingered in my heart, preventing me from fully moving on. Things seemed to be going well until I noticed Amelia acting strangely again. At first, it was small things. She started staying late at work, something she rarely did before. One evening, I happened to see her phone light up with a notification. It was a message from someone saved as K. The text was short, "I miss you. See you Thursday?" My heart sank once more. I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was just a colleague? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But this time, I decided to be cautious and not let her know I had seen anything. I needed to find out what was really going on before confronting her. On Thursday, I told Amelia I'd be working late, but in reality, I had taken the day off. I left my car at the office and took a taxi home. That evening, I saw her leave the apartment in a black dress I'd never seen before. She looked elegant, but it wasn't for me. I decided to follow her. She got into a taxi and went to a restaurant downtown. I watched from a safe distance as she entered the building. A few minutes later, a man joined her. He was tall, confident, with thick dark hair. They hugged like close friends, but their eyes and body language spoke of something more. It was painful to watch, but I stayed. I saw them sitting at a table, laughing and holding hands. This wasn't just a dinner between colleagues. It was a romantic date. After dinner, they left together. I waited outside, and my heart froze when I saw him kiss her before helping her into a taxi. This time, I didn't wait for explanations. When Amelia came home, I was waiting for her in the living room. She tried to lie, saying she'd been at work, but I simply pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken at the restaurant. She started crying, trying to justify herself. "Jake, it's not what you think. We're just friends, But I wasn't listening anymore. This time, her words felt empty. I asked her if she loved this man. She denied it, but I didn't believe her. That night was the darkest of my life. I spent hours thinking about whether there was any point in staying in this marriage. But I wasn't ready to give up on everything we'd built together. In the morning, I told her this was her last chance. If I saw even a hint of suspicion again, it would be over. After her second betrayal, Amelia became even more attentive. She constantly asked how I was feeling, brought me coffee in bed, and suggested we spend more time together. But there was still a rift between us. I felt like a man standing on the edge of an abyss, holding onto a rope that could snap at any moment. We returned to therapy. I tried to understand why she had betrayed me twice. Amelia confessed that she had felt empty in our marriage, that living with my emotional distance was hard for her. I acknowledged that perhaps I had made mistakes too, but that didn't excuse her actions. The following months felt like walking a tightrope. On one hand, Amelia tried to rebuild our trust. She suggested trips together, cooked at home more often, and always left her phone in plain sight, as if to remind me she had nothing to hide. On the other hand, I noticed that my feelings for her had changed. I no longer looked at her with the same admiration as before. A scar remained in my heart, and even her best efforts couldn't heal it. One weekend, she suggested we visit a small lakeside town where we had first spent time together as a couple. I agreed, though with reservations. The trip was filled with mixed emotions. We walked the same path where we once held hands, talked about the future, and laughed at little things. But this time it was different. I looked at Amelia and tried to see the woman I had once loved with all my heart. Instead, I saw someone who had betrayed me not once but twice, and it was hard to come to terms with that. When we returned home, she asked, "Do you still believe in us?" It was a hard question. I sighed and answered honestly, "I want to believe, but it will take time." Despite all her efforts, my pain didn't go away. Memories of the moments I found out about her betrayals haunted me. They were like ghosts, appearing at the most unexpected times, overshadowing even our best days. That's when I started drinking. At first, it was just a glass of wine in the evening to relax. Then it became a few shots of whiskey when the thoughts of her infidelity became unbearable. Alcohol provided temporary relief, a way to escape, but it was also destroying me from the inside. Amelia noticed and tried to intervene. "Jake, you've been drinking too much lately. Do you really think this will help?" She said one evening as I sat with a half-empty bottle in my hand. "It's the only thing that helps," I snapped back. We started fighting more often. Her attempts to save our marriage felt hollow, and my efforts to rebuild trust in us grew weaker by the day. Alcohol became my escape, even though I knew it wasn't a solution. 6 months after I started drinking, I realized things between us were only getting worse. Amelia tried to play the role of the perfect wife, but I could see something different in her eyes. Something had changed, and I already knew what it meant. One day, I accidentally saw her laptop left open on the kitchen table. A new name appeared in her messages: David. The conversation wasn't overly intimate, but I had a gut feeling it was just the surface, hiding something deeper. This time, I didn't wait or make a scene. I decided to act smarter. I installed a monitoring app on her phone that allowed me to see her calls and messages. I knew it was wrong, but the trust between us had long since vanished. A few weeks later, my worst suspicions were confirmed. Amelia was cheating again. This time, she didn't even try to hide it as carefully as before. She was meeting David at a hotel in the suburbs. I found out when I saw the message, "Room 312. I'm already here." I got in my car and drove to the hotel. It was one of the longest and most painful drives of my life. When I arrived, I saw her car in the parking lot. My heart pounded as if it wanted to burst out of my chest. I walked into the hotel, asked at the front desk for the room number, and went up to the 3rd floor. The door opened when I knocked. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to see her eyes. Amelia stood before me in a robe, and behind her appeared David, a man older than me, confident and perhaps even wealthier. He looked at me as if he thought he'd won some kind of battle. I didn't cause a scene. I silently turned and walked away. It was the hardest walk of my life. After Amelia's third betrayal, I fell into a true abyss. Alcohol wasn't just an escape anymore. It became a part of my life. I drank every night, not even trying to hide it. Friends began to drift away, and I lost all motivation at work. This time, Amelia didn't even try to defend herself. She said, "Jake, maybe we should just split up. Maybe we're just different people." Her words enraged me. She had destroyed our life, and now she was suggesting giving up so easily? I told her, "No, Amelia, we won't divorce, but everything will change." A plan began to form in my mind. I wanted to make her feel what I had felt, but not with violence, not with cruelty. My revenge would be subtle and unforgettable. I started acting gradually. After Amelia's third betrayal, I felt I had lost myself completely. My world was falling apart. But in my darkest moment, an idea emerged, a glimmer of light. I decided I wouldn't be a victim anymore. I forced myself to look at the situation clearly and realized that if I couldn't regain my peace, I could at least create justice. I wanted revenge, not brutal but effective, something that would make her feel the same pain I had endured. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was a cold, calculated plan. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was regaining control over my life. The first step was the hardest. Stop drinking. I knew alcohol only deepened my despair and made me weaker. Every evening, when the urge to open a bottle struck, I reminded myself of my goal. After a few weeks, my mind was clear enough to focus on planning. My strategy was built on two pillars: creating the illusion that I was forgiving Amelia while simultaneously preparing to leave her without a shred of justification when the truth came to light. I decided to use her own actions against her in a way she would never see coming. I began to act cautiously. First, I pretended I was ready to forgive everything. One evening during dinner, I said, "Amelia, I've realized that holding on to anger is destroying me. If we want to move forward, I'm ready to forget everything that happened." Her eyes lit up with hope. She looked like she couldn't believe my words. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, holding her hand. Those words cost me a great deal of effort, but they were necessary. I wanted her to feel safe and let her guard down. The second step was to gather evidence. I started keeping a sort of journal, noting all her actions that seemed suspicious to me. I also kept the app on her phone to receive alerts about her messages and calls. But this time, I didn't want to just expose her. I wanted her to expose herself to everyone she had deceived. In the months that followed, I played the role of the perfect husband. Amelia was convinced I had forgiven her. We began going out for dinners more often, visiting friends, and even planned a trip to Florida for a vacation. She seemed happy again, which made her relax. I, on the other hand, used every opportunity to reinforce her trust. Every morning, I made us coffee, brought her flowers without reason, and even gifted her a bracelet she had wanted for a long time. To everyone around us, we appeared to be the perfect couple, but inside, I was seething with hatred. A key moment came when I noticed her new habit of attending work meetings on weekends. I suspected these were just a cover for her new escapades. One day, when she said she was meeting clients, I decided to check. I got in my car and followed her to a small cafe on the other side of town. There she was, not with clients, but with David. They were laughing, and I saw her touch his hand. This time, I didn't take photos or confront her on the spot. No, I had a bigger plan. I started meticulously documenting all her meetings. Every time she lied about where she was, I recorded it. I even began recording her phone conversations using a special app. All of this was compiled into a folder that became my trump card. In addition to gathering evidence, I decided to involve our mutual friends in my plan. Many of them saw us as the perfect couple, and I knew the truth about Amelia would shock them. One evening, I invited two of our closest friends, Sarah and Michael, over for dinner. Over wine and conversation, I casually asked if they had noticed anything strange about Amelia's behavior lately. Michael admitted he had seen her with another man a few times but didn't want to interfere. That confirmed my suspicions. "You know, Jake," Michael said, "you deserve better. If she doesn't appreciate you, maybe it's time to move on." "Not yet," I replied, staring into my wine glass. "I have a plan." After that evening with Sarah and Michael, I realized I was ready to set my plan into motion. But for it to work, I needed to convince Amelia that I completely trusted her. She had to feel so secure that she would drop all caution. One morning over breakfast, I said, "I've been thinking, maybe we could renew our vows? Start fresh." Amelia looked surprised but delighted. "That's so unexpected, Jake. Do you really want that?" "Of course. If we truly want to move forward, we need to seal it." In the weeks that followed, I played the role of a husband eager to strengthen his marriage. We started planning a small ceremony with close friends. Amelia seemed thrilled, and it worked to my advantage. But while she was busy with the arrangements, I focused on another part of my plan. I reached out to everyone who could confirm her infidelities. I ensured I had her messages, surveillance photos from the hotel, and even recorded phone calls, all at my disposal. From time to time, I checked to see if Amelia was still in contact with David. As I expected, their relationship hadn't ended. She continued meeting him, even while we were preparing for our ceremony. It was almost ironic. I was crafting an illusion of a fresh start for her, while she was planning yet another betrayal behind my back. One evening, when she told me she was going to a friend's bachelorette party, I decided to follow her again. She arrived at a restaurant where David was waiting for her. They looked happy, laughing and making no effort to hide their feelings. That was the final straw. I took photos of them together, and this time it felt like even the camera captured the absurdity of the situation. In that moment, I felt not only pain but also a strange sense of relief. Everything was going according to plan. The day of our ceremony was special for two reasons. For Amelia, it was meant to be a moment of triumph. She had convinced me to forgive her, reclaiming her image as the perfect wife in front of our friends. For me, it marked the culmination of months of pain, preparation, and waiting. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual.